The last house before the woods sat crooked on cinder blocks. Its aluminum siding stained the color of old newspapers. A thread of smoke rose from somewhere behind the tree line. Not campfire smoke, tire smoke, chemical and bitter. The kind that came from things burning that were never meant to burn. By the time the wind carried it over the trailer park, it was just another smell in a place that already smelled like rust and propane, and years nobody wanted to remember. Mara Whitlock stood at the edge of the gravel lot, a backpack slung over one shoulder, watching the smoke fade into the low gray ceiling of Montana sky. 8 years old, 72 pounds, hair the color of creek water in shadow, pulled back in a knot that had come loose somewhere between home and here. She wore a jacket 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled to her elbows, and boots with laces that didn't match because one had broken 3 weeks ago, and she'd replaced it with paracord from a spool she kept under her bed. She didn't look at the other trailers as she walked, didn't look at the chain link fence or the overturned shopping cart or the dog that limped past her without lifting its head. She looked at the woods. 4,000 acres of pine and Douglas fir and silence. No trails past the first quarter mile. No signs. No fences that hadn't rusted through decades ago. Just trees and the things that lived in them and the girl who spent more time out there than she did anywhere else. She crossed the lot. Gravel crunched under her boots. A man in a lawn chair outside the double-wide 3 spaces down watched her go. Didn't wave, didn't call out. Just watched the way people in Harlan watch things, like they'd seen it all before and none of it mattered enough to do anything about. Mara reached the tree line and stepped in. The sound changed. Wind through branches instead of wind through aluminum. Birds instead of someone's television bleeding through a cracked window. She stopped, took a breath, let it out slow. Then she started walking. Not the way a child wanders, the way someone moves when they know exactly where they're going. Her feet found roots without looking down, avoided soft ground, stepped over deadfall without breaking stride. 30 yards in and the trailer park was gone. 60 yards and there was only forest. She moved through it like water through a groove in stone. Easy, inevitable. Like she'd been doing this her whole life. She had. 3 years ago, Henry Whitlock took his granddaughter into these woods for the first time. Mara was 5, small for her age, quiet in a way that made teachers write notes home to her mother, notes Jolene never read. Henry picked Mara up on a Saturday morning in a truck that smelled like oil and sawdust, told Jolene they were going for pancakes. Jolene was still in bed. Empty bottle on the nightstand. She waved them off without looking up. Henry drove past the diner, past the gas station, past the turnoff that led to the highway. He drove until the road turned to gravel, and the gravel turned to dirt, and the dirt ended at a gate that hadn't been locked in 20 years. He parked, got out, opened Mara's door, held out his hand. She took it. They walked. Henry didn't talk much, never had. But when he did talk, people listened. Not because he was loud, because every word cost him something and he didn't waste them. He walked Mara to a clearing where the canopy opened up and the light came through in clean white columns. He stopped, looked down at her. "You afraid of falling?" Mara shook her head. "Good, because that's the first thing I'm going to teach you. How to fall without breaking." He spent an hour showing her how to tuck her chin, how to roll with the impact, how to spread the force across her back instead of taking it all in one place. She fell 20 times that morning, onto packed dirt, onto pine needles, onto her side and her shoulder, and once, when she mistimed the roll flat on her back, hard enough to knock the wind out of her. She didn't cry. She got up. Henry watched, didn't help her, didn't tell her she was doing it wrong, just watched. When she got it right. When she landed and rolled and came up on her feet without a sound, he nodded. "That's it. You just learned the most important thing I'll ever teach you, how to survive the fall. Everything else is just details." They came back every Saturday. Jolene never asked where they really went, didn't care as long as Mara was gone and quiet, and not asking her questions she didn't want to answer. Henry taught Mara to move, to balance on logs slick with moss, to read the weight of a person by the way they stood, to untie knots, to tie them, to breathe when her body wanted to panic. He taught her leverage, showed her how a 100-pound girl could move a 200-pound man if she knew where to put the pressure. He taught her to watch, to see what people were doing before they did it, to notice which foot carried their weight, which hand they favored, where their eyes went when they were about to move. And he taught her to stay calm. Whatever happens, Mara, stay calm. Panic is what kills you, not the thing you're afraid of, the panic. She was 6 when he told her she was the best student he'd ever had. She didn't understand what that meant. Henry ran a small dojo on the east edge of town, cinder block building with a painted sign that had faded to the point where you could barely read the words. Harlan Martial Arts, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Aikido. Inside was a mat room that smelled like sweat in old canvas, a heavy bag in the corner, a wooden dummy no one used anymore. Henry taught loggers, truckers, a few deputies from the county over, men who came in after work with sore backs and bad knees and a need to feel like they could still handle themselves if it came to that. He didn't charge much, $20 a session. He wasn't trying to get rich. He was trying to pass something on before it died with him. Mara didn't know any of this. She just knew that when Henry showed her a technique, she could do it. Not eventually, not after weeks of practice. Right away, like her body already knew and was just waiting for permission. Henry saw it, saw something in the way she moved that reminded him of himself 40 years ago, before the scars, before the choices that left him in a dying town teaching strangers how to fall. He started bringing her to the dojo, not during regular hours, early mornings before anyone else arrived. He'd unlock the door and Mara would step onto the mat in socked feet and they'd work. Quietly, efficiently, no wasted motion. He taught her wrist locks, throws, how to turn a grab into a reversal, how to use someone's strength against them. She absorbed it all, didn't ask why, didn't need to. It made sense to her in a way school never did, in a way nothing else in her life did. One morning when she was 7, Mara asked Henry why he was teaching her these things. They were sitting on the edge of the mat. Henry was taping his wrist. Old injury, never healed right. He didn't look at her when he answered. Because I'm teaching you to survive what I couldn't protect your mother from. Mara didn't understand. Henry didn't explain. He stood up, wrapped the tape around his knuckles. Let's go again. They worked for another hour. At the end, Henry handed her a small notebook. Worn leather cover, pages filled with diagrams and notes in his tight, careful handwriting. Exercises, drills, techniques she hadn't learned yet. He pointed to the last page. There was a single line written at the bottom. If you're reading this, I'm gone. Remember, strength isn't about power. It's about knowing when to bend and when to break them. Mara looked up. Henry's face was calm. You keep this. You practice what's in it. Even after I'm not here to show you. Especially then. Understand. She nodded. He reached out, put his hand on her shoulder. Heavy, warm. You're going to be stronger than I ever was. Not because of what I taught you, because of what you are. Don't waste it. 14 months ago, Henry Whitlock died. Heart attack, quick and quiet, sitting in his truck outside the dojo at 5 in the morning. Engine still running, coffee still hot in the cup holder. By the time someone found him, he'd been gone for hours. Jolene got the call at the diner. She didn't cry, didn't speak, just hung up the phone and walked out to her car and sat there until her shift supervisor came and knocked on the window. Mara was at school. They didn't tell her until she got home. Jolene was sitting at the kitchen table, bottle in front of her, already half gone. Your grandfather's dead. Mara stood in the doorway, didn't move, didn't cry, just stood there. Jolene looked at her. You're not going to the funeral. I don't want you there. I don't want his people looking at you like you're some kind of legacy. You're not. You're mine. Understand? Amara nodded, went to her room, closed the door, sat on the floor with her back against the bed, and opened the notebook Henry had given her. Read every page, front to back, then read it again. She didn't go to the funeral. She went to the dojo, broke a window, climbed in, stood in the center of the mat room in the dark, and practiced every form Henry had ever taught her. Slow, precise, every movement connected to the one before it. She practiced until the sun came up. Then she climbed back out and walked home. Jolene never noticed she'd been gone. For the next 14 months, Mara went to the woods every day. She brought the notebook, set up ropes between trees and worked on knots until her fingers went raw, balanced on fallen logs until she could walk from one end to the other without looking down. Practice falls onto hard ground and soft ground, and ground covered in rocks that left bruises across her shoulders. She didn't do this because she was angry. She did it because it was the only thing that made sense, the only thing that felt like it mattered. Henry was gone. Jolene was drunk most of the time and absent the rest. School was a place where people talked, and Mara had nothing to say. The woods were different. The woods didn't ask her questions, didn't look at her like something was wrong. The woods just were. And in the woods, Mara could be exactly what Henry had trained her to be: focused, calm, ready. Saturday morning, late April. The sky was low and gray, and the air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. Mara left the trailer at 7. Jolene's car was gone. Night shift at the truck stop 3 towns over. She wouldn't be back until afternoon. Mara ate a piece of bread, filled a water bottle, put the notebook in her backpack along with a length of paracord and a granola bar she'd been saving for 3 days. She walked to the woods. The dog appeared at the trailhead, brown and white, ribs showing, no collar. Mara had seen it before. It didn't belong to anyone. Just showed up sometimes, ate whatever people left out, slept under porches. She crouched down, held out her hand. The dog sniffed it, licked her knuckles. She scratched behind its ears. The dog leaned into her leg. You're coming with me today, aren't you? The mite wagged its tail. They walked into the trees together. Mara didn't follow a trail. Trails were for people who didn't know where they were going. She moved through gaps in the underbrush, over ridges, along a creek bed that ran clear and cold over smooth stones. The dog stayed close, stopped when she stopped, moved when she moved. They walked for an hour, maybe more. Time didn't mean much out here. The sun was hidden behind clouds and the forest looked the same in every direction unless you knew what to look for. Mara knew. She'd walked every square mile of these woods with Henry, knew where the ground dropped away into ravines, knew where the shale slopes got slick after rain, knew where the old deer trails cut through the thickest brush. She was heading toward a section she hadn't explored much. The far northeastern corner, where the trees grew taller and the canopy closed in tight enough that even in summer the ground stayed dim. The dog stopped, ears up, staring into the trees ahead. Mara stopped too. What is it? The dog didn't move. Just stared. Then it took off, straight into the underbrush, fast. Mara called after it. The dog didn't come back. She followed. The brush was thick. Branches caught her jacket, scraped her arms. She pushed through, kept her eyes on the flash of brown and white ahead. The dog was running flat out now, chasing something, or running from something. Mara couldn't tell. She broke through a wall of tangled berry bushes and stumbled into a clearing. Stopped. The dog was sitting at the far edge, panting, looking up. Mara followed its gaze. There was a man hanging from a tree, upside down, boots knotted in rope, arms dangling beneath him. Blood had turned his face a sick purple. He wasn't moving. For a moment that stretched longer than it should have, Mara just stood there. Her heartbeat steady in her chest. Not fast, not slow, just steady. She thought about running, thought about going home, thought about pretending she'd never seen this. But even as the thoughts formed, she knew she wouldn't act on them. Henry's voice was already in her head. Stay calm. Whatever happens, stay calm. And beneath that, something else. Something that had been building in her since the first time Henry showed her how to read a person's weight. This wasn't something to run from. This was a problem to solve. She took a step forward, then another. Looked at the man. He was big, not fat, thick. The kind of build that came from decades of hard living. He wore a leather vest covered in patches. One of them read Hell's Angels in an arc over a winged skull. His wrists were scraped raw. Whoever tied him up hadn't been gentle. The rope around his boots was wrapped tight and knotted to a branch about 12 feet off the ground. Dried blood ran from a cut above his ear and had pooled in his hair, which hung straight down like a dark curtain. He'd been there for hours, maybe longer. Mara stood still, studied the scene the way Henry had taught her. What's wrong with this picture? What tells a story? The knot was a running bowline. She knew this knot. Henry had drilled it into her 100 times. A running bowline tightens under load. You can't just pull it free. You need slack. And slack meant getting this man's weight off the line. She looked around. 10 feet from the tree, a fallen oak lay across a shallow ditch. Big enough. She walked to it, dragged a thick branch from the deadfall over to the base of the tree, and wedged it under the taut rope where it met the trunk. Then she found a rock the size of a softball and used it as a fulcrum beneath the branch. Lever and fulcrum. Henry's first lesson. You don't need to be strong, Mara. You need to be smart about where you put the pressure. She pushed down on the branch. The rope shifted. Not much, maybe 2 inches of slack, but that was enough. Her small fingers found the loop, found the tail, walked the knot backward. The rope slipped, then slipped again. The man dropped. Not gracefully. He hit the ground hard, shoulder first, let out a sound that was half groan, half something animal. Mara jumped back. The man lay on his side, breathing in short, ugly gasps. His legs were useless, no blood flow for hours. They'd be dead weight for a while. She knelt beside him. His wrists were raw, almost to the muscle. The skin around his boots was swollen tight where the rope had cut into his ankles. A bruise covered the left side of his face from cheekbone to jaw. Someone had hit him. More than once. More than twice. His eyes opened. Gray, bloodshot, unfocused. He looked at Mara the way you'd look at a hallucination. Who? That was all he managed. My name's Mara. Don't try to move your legs yet. The blood has to come back. She said it the way a paramedic would say it. Flat, factual. No fear in her voice at all. The man stared at her, tried to sit up. His arms buckled. He tried again and made it halfway before the pain knocked him back down. Mara put her hand on his shoulder. Slow, don't force it. He looked at her hand, then at her face. Then he closed his eyes and lay back on the ground. His name was Dale Mercer, road name Ironside, 42 years old. He'd been riding with the Hells Angels out of the Central Valley chapter for 22 years. Not a weekend rider, not a hobbyist, a lifer. The kind of man who had buried friends and done time and never once considered another way to live. Last night he had been riding alone on a back road about 10 miles from Harlan, coming back from a meet with another chapter. The road was empty, no streetlights, just trees and asphalt and the sound of his engine. Then headlights behind him. 4 of them, 2 bikes. They ran him off the road at a curve. His bike went sideways into a ditch and Dale went over the handlebars into the gravel. Before he could stand, 4 men were on him. They wore scorpion patches, a rival crew that had been pushing into Angel territory for months. They beat Dale with fists and boots and a length of pipe. When he stopped fighting back, they loaded him into a truck, drove him deep into these woods. strung him from a tree with his own tow rope. The message wasn't subtle. Come into our territory, this is what happens. Dale told Mara this in pieces, between long pauses to breathe and longer pauses to cough. Mara sat cross-legged in the dirt and listened, didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions, just let him talk, the way Henry used to let her talk after a hard day at school. When he finished, she stood up, walked to the creek she'd heard trickling nearby, scooped water in a curved piece of bark, and brought it back. Dale drank it in 3 gulps. She brought more. Then she banged a strip from the bottom of her t-shirt, soaked it in creek water, cleaned the cut above his ear. She checked the rope burns on his ankles and wrists and packed them with damp moss, something Henry had shown her when she'd scraped her knee on a rock. Sphagnum moss. It holds moisture and keeps dirt out. Henry had learned that from his own father. Dale watched all of this without saying a word. At one point, he shook his head slowly. How old are you? 8. 8. He said it like the word didn't make sense. The feeling started coming back to his legs, pins and needles at first, then a deep ache that made him grit his teeth. Mara told him to flex his toes, then his ankles, then his knees. She'd watched Henry work with a student once who had pinched a nerve during a throw. Same process. Start small, work outward. The dog came back, trotted into the clearing like it owned the place, sat down beside Mara, put its head on her knee. She fed it a piece of the granola bar she always carried in her pocket. The dog chewed it slowly and leaned against her leg. Dale managed to sit up, leaned against the tree, let out a long, slow breath. His color was coming back. His breathing had steadied to something close to normal. The forest was quiet around them, wind through the canopy, a woodpecker somewhere in the distance, the creek running over stones. For a few minutes, nothing was wrong. Mara sat with the dog. Dale sat with his back against the tree. The sun came through the branches in long, warm stripes. It felt like any other Saturday morning in the woods. Peaceful. Ordinary, like the worst was over. Dale even almost smiled. Then the sound came. Engines, distant but unmistakable. The low, heavy throb of motorcycles. More than one. Getting closer. Dale's face changed. Every bit of calm drained out of it. He grabbed Mara's arm. That's them. The Scorpions. They're coming back to check on me. You need to run, right now. Mara looked at him. Didn't move. I said, run, kid. You can't walk. That doesn't matter. It does to me. Mara stood up, looked into the trees in the direction of the engines, then looked down at Dale. Can you crawl? What? There's a hollow about 40 yards that way, where a tree fell and pulled up the roots. I can cover you with branches, but you have to get there. Dale stared at her. This man had been in bar fights, knife fights, situations most people only see in movies. And he was looking at an 8-year-old girl giving him tactical orders. He crawled. It was ugly. His arms did all the work while his legs dragged behind him. Dead and useless. Every few feet he stopped, breathing hard, face pressed into the dirt. The engines were louder now, close enough to hear individual bikes. 2, maybe 3. Mara walked beside Dale the entire way. Didn't rush him, didn't pull his arm, just walked and kept her eyes on the tree line. It took him 4 minutes to cover 40 yards when they reached the hollow. A deep scoop in the earth where a massive pine had toppled years ago and ripped its root ball out of the ground. Dale rolled into it. The space was tight, just big enough for a man his size to lie flat. Mara worked fast, layered branches over the opening, packed dead leaves into the gaps, dragged a wide piece of rotted bark over the top and pressed it down until it looked like part of the forest floor. She left a narrow gap near his face so he could breathe, then stepped back, looked at her work from 5 feet away, 6 feet, 10 feet. At 10 feet, you couldn't see him. You'd walk right past it. Now go, Dale whispered from inside the hollow. Run home. Please, not yet. Mara went back to the clearing. the spot where Dale had been hanging. She stood there and looked at the scene the way Henry had taught her, not with panic, with focus. What's wrong with this picture? What tells a story I don't want told? The cut rope dangling from the branch, the scuffed ground where Dale had hit the earth, the drag marks from where he'd pulled himself across the clearing, the flattened grass where she'd sat beside him, the damp spot where she'd cleaned his wounds. All of it told a story, and the story said someone was here and helped him. She started covering the tracks, kicked dirt and leaves over the drag marks, scuffed the ground where she'd been sitting until it looked like any other patch of forest floor, dragged the branch and rock she'd used as a lever off into the brush, and wedged them under a deadfall where they looked like they'd been there for years. Picked up the piece of bark she'd used to carry water and tossed it into the thicket. Found the strip of t-shirt she'd used to clean Dale's wound and stuffed them deep into her pocket. In about 3 minutes, the clearing looked like nothing had happened there except a rope breaking on its own. Then she did one more thing, took the loose end of the rope and retied it, made it look like the bowline had failed under the man's weight and he'd fallen and stumbled off into the woods alone. A story the scorpions might believe. Might. Then she heard the engines cut out, boots on the ground, voices, maybe 100 yards away and closing. Mara moved to a cluster of thick brush at the edge of the clearing and crouched low. The dog was beside her. She put her hand on its muzzle and the dog went silent. 3 men came through the trees, leather vests, heavy boots. One carried a length of chain wrapped around his fist. Another had a hunting knife on his belt. The third was the biggest, shaved head, neck tattoos that crawled up past his collar. He walked like a man who expected the world to move out of his way. They reached the clearing. The big one looked up at the dangling rope, then down at the ground. He's gone. Rope broke, the one with the chain said. Rope didn't break. Look at it. It unraveled. The big one walked the clearing in a slow circle, kicked at the dirt, looked at the tree line. Mara pressed herself lower into the brush. The dog stayed still under her hand. He couldn't have walked. Not after hanging that long. His legs would be dead, so somebody helped him. Silence. The big one scanned the trees. His eyes swept right past the brush where Mara was hidden. Then back. Spread out. He's close. They moved into the trees. One went north, one went east. The big one walked south, toward the hollow where Dale was hiding. Mara watched him, 30 yards, 20, 15. He was going to walk right past it, or he was going to see the fresh brush piled over the gap. Mara moved. She didn't think about it, didn't plan it. Her body just went. She broke from the brush on the opposite side of the clearing and ran, not away from the men, across their field of vision. Snapped branches, kicked rocks, made noise. The big one stopped, turned, saw a flash of movement through the trees. Over there, all 3 converged on the sound, away from Dale, toward Mara. Henry Whitlock didn't just teach Mara how to fight. He taught her how to move through woods. He grew up in these forests, knew every game trail, every slope, every place where the ground dropped away without warning. And he'd walked Mara through all of it. She was faster than them, lighter. She knew where the ground was soft and where it was hard, could hear them crashing through the brush behind her, heavy and loud, snapping branches she had ducked under without slowing down. The first man, the one with the chain, was the fastest, came after her at a full sprint, boots pounding, breath coming in hard bursts. Mara cut left along a ridge she knew well. There was a narrow ravine just past a stand of birch trees, 2 feet wide, easy to miss if you didn't know it was there. She jumped it, clean, landed on the other side without breaking stride. He didn't see it. His right foot hit the edge and the ground gave way. He went down hard, full weight driving his ankle sideways. The snap was loud enough to hear over his scream. The chain flew out of his hand and rattled against a rock below. He lay there, curled on his side, clutching his leg, cursing words that didn't mean anything anymore because the pain had taken all the meaning out of them. Mara didn't look back. One down. The second one, the one with the knife, heard the scream and changed course. Came around a thick stand of cedar. Moving more carefully now, eyes scanning, knife out. Mara let him see her, just a flash, a glimpse of movement between the trees. He went after it. She led him along a game trail that Henry had walked with her dozens of times. It looked solid, packed earth, roots, a few flat stones. But about 40 yards in the trail curved along a slope of loose shale that sat at a steep angle above the creek. If you knew the trail, you stayed on the inside edge, close to the trees. If you didn't, your feet went to the outside. Mara ran the inside edge. The man behind her didn't know to do the same. His boots hit the shale and his feet went out from under him like he'd stepped on ice. He slid 10 feet down the bank and hit the creek hard. Water splashed up around him. The knife spun out of his hand and disappeared into the current. He tried to stand, slipped, went down again. By the time he got his footing, Mara was gone. Two down. The big one was smarter. He didn't chase. He stopped, listened, tracked the sounds instead of running toward them, moving through the trees with a patience the other two didn't have. Rayed the broken branches, the scuffed earth, the direction of the noise. And he circled around. Mara came through a gap between two boulders and stopped. A small clearing, flat ground, and there he was, standing at the far edge, waiting. He'd cut her off. You're the one who cut him loose. Mara didn't answer. Her heart was pounding. She could feel it in her throat. But her hands were still. Her feet were planted. He walked toward her, slowly, each step deliberate. Little girl playing in the woods. You have no idea what you stepped into. He was close now. 10 feet, 5. His hand came up. Where is he? Mara said nothing. He reached for her. This is where Henry Whitlock's training came to the surface. Not as theory, not as practice, as instinct. When the man's hand closed around Mara's wrist, she felt the pressure, felt the intent behind it. And for half a second, she hesitated. This was a grown man. This was real. This wasn't practice on the mat with Henry guiding her through it. This was a man who wanted to hurt her, who would hurt her if she didn't move. And in that half second, Henry's voice cut through the fear. Stay calm. Whatever happens, stay calm. You know what to do. Mara didn't pull away. She stepped into him, toward the grab, not away from it. Her free hand came up and her fingers wrapped around his gripping hand. She turned her body, dropped her weight, torqued his wrist outward in a movement so clean, so precise that the man's grip broke before he even understood what was happening. It was a basic wrist release, kotegeshi. Henry had taught it to her when she was 6. The man's arm twisted. His body followed. Off balance and confused, he stumbled sideways. Mara didn't let go. She guided his momentum into a low sweep. Her foot caught the inside of his ankle, and he went down. Hard. 240 pounds hitting packed earth. He lay there, blinking up at the canopy. An 8-year-old girl had just put him on the ground. Before he could get up, a hand grabbed his vest from behind and hauled him sideways. Dale, on his feet, shaky, unsteady, but upright. He dragged himself out of the hollow when he heard the chase. Circulation had returned to his legs just enough. He wasn't strong, but he was angry, and he had 40 pounds on the man beneath him. Dale pinned the big one's arm behind his back and leaned close. You strung me up like an animal, and a little girl cut me down. How does that story end for you? The big one said nothing. The other two were done. One was sitting in the ravine holding his ankle, cursing. The other was pulling himself out of the creek. Soaked and disarmed, nobody was fighting anymore. Dale let the big one up. Take your boys and ride out. You come back to this part of the forest again, it won't be a rope in a tree waiting for you. They left. It took them 20 minutes to regroup and limped back to their bikes. The engines fired up, the sound faded, and then the forest was quiet again. Dale sat down on a log, breathing hard. His legs were shaking, but he was alive. He looked at Mara, who was standing a few feet away, the dog sitting at her heel like it had been hers all along. "Where did you learn to do that?" "My grandfather." "Who was your grandfather?" "Henry Whitlock." Dale didn't speak for a long time, just looked at her, and Mara saw something shift in his face, something that went beyond surprise. "I knew Henry," Dale said it quietly. Mara blinked. "You did, 25 years ago, before the club, before any of this." He touched his vest. "I walked into a little dojo on the edge of a town I can't even remember the name of. I was 19, angry, looking for a fight. A man in a white guy threw me on my back 6 times in 10 minutes, then helped me up and said, 'Now, do you want to learn something?' That was him," Mara said. "That was him." Dale shook his head slowly. "I trained with Henry for about a year. He changed the way I moved, the way I thought about my body. Then I left. Got into the life, lost his number, never went back." He paused. "He said something to me once. The last time I saw him, I never forgot it." "What did he say?" "He said the strongest student I'll ever train hasn't been born yet." Dale looked at Mara. "I think he was talking about you." Mara didn't say anything. She scratched the dog behind its ears and looked at the ground. 30 minutes later, Jolene Whitlock came crashing through the trees, red-faced and panicked. She'd woken up, found Mara gone, followed the trail into the woods. She found her daughter sitting beside a man in a leather vest, a dog between them, in a forest clearing that smelled like pine and creek water. Dale stood up, slowly, looked at Jolene and told her all of it. Not the club business, not the scorpions, but what Mara had done, how she'd gotten him down, how she'd hidden him, how she'd led 3 grown men through the woods like they were chasing smoke, how she'd used a technique that most adults can't execute properly after years of training. Jolene looked at her daughter, really looked at her, maybe for the first time. "She learned that from your father," Dale said. "He trained her." Jolene's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then it closed. Then her eyes filled. She knelt down in the dirt and wrapped her arms around her daughter and held on like she was afraid Mara might blow away. Mara hugged her back, tight. The dog nudged its way between them. Dale's club brothers arrived an hour later. 2 bikes came up the fire road and found him at the trailhead. They helped him onto the back of a bike. Before they left, Dale crouched down in front of Mara. "Your grandfather was right, kid, about all of it." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small brass coin. It had a wing stamped on one side and a fist on the other. He put it in Mara's hand. "This isn't regular. Your grandfather had one. It means the Brotherhood owes you blood protection. Anyone wearing our patch sees this, they'll die for you. Understand?" Mara nodded. The bikes pulled away. The sound faded into distance. The forest went quiet. Jolene stood up, took Mara's hand. They walked back toward the trailhead. The dog followed. Jolene didn't let go the entire way. When they reached the trailer, the sun was low, orange light cutting through the trees. Jolene sat down on the steps. Mara sat beside her. The dog lay down at their feet. Jolene looked at her daughter. "I didn't know he was training you." Mara nodded. "I know. Why didn't you tell me? You wouldn't have let him." Jolene was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You were right. I wouldn't have." Silence. The sound of wind through pine. A car passing on the road. Jolene took a breath. Let it out slow. "When I was 18, I fell in love with a man your father hated. His name was Ethan Carver. He rode with a crew out of Spokane. Not the Angels. Different group. Dangerous group. Your grandfather found out. Used his connections to make Ethan disappear. Ran him out of the state. Threatened him. Told him if he ever came back, if he ever contacted me, it would be the last thing he did. Ethan left. I found out I was pregnant 2 months later." Jolene's voice cracked. She steadied it. Your grandfather said he did it to protect me. Said Ethan worked for people who would have used me. Used you. Maybe he was right. I don't know. But I never forgave him. I kept you away from him. Didn't let him see you. Didn't let him be part of your life. And then one day I woke up and realized you were spending every Saturday with him, getting pancakes. She laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. I knew you weren't getting pancakes. I just didn't care enough to stop it. I was already so far gone into the bottle that I couldn't see past my own anger. Mara looked at her mother. He said he was teaching me to survive what he couldn't protect you from. What did he mean? Jolene's face went pale. The people Ethan worked for. They're called the Syndicate. They control half the criminal networks in this region. Drugs, guns, other things. Your grandfather got out 30 years ago, but they never forget. If they know about you, about what you can do, they'll come for you, Mom. That evening, Mara sat in the backyard behind the trailer. The dog lay beside her. She could hear Jolene inside, moving around the kitchen, the clink of a glass, but not vodka. Water, just water. Mara stood on the patch of bare dirt where she always practiced, planted her feet, straightened her back, breathed in through her nose and out through her mouth, and she began to move through the forms Henry had taught her. Slow, precise, every movement connected to the one before it. The brass coins sat on the steps behind her, catching the last of the daylight. She was 8 years old. She had saved a man's life with rope knowledge and a wrist lock. She had outrun 3 grown men in a forest she knew better than they ever would. And she had done all of it because a quiet old man in a white Jeep had looked at a 5-year-old girl and seen something nobody else could see. Henry Whitlock never got to watch his granddaughter grow up. But on that Saturday morning, in a forest outside a town that barely exists, his teaching walked through the trees, climbed a tree, untied a knot, faced down 3 men who had no idea what they were dealing with, and it stood in a backyard, barefoot, moving through forms in the fading light with a toy watching from the steps. Some lessons don't die with the teacher. 3 days passed. The story spread through Harlan the way stories do in small towns. Someone saw the Scorpions limp into the emergency room 2 counties over. Broken ankle, bruises, one of them soaked to the bone and claiming he'd been attacked in the woods. By the time the story reached the Antler, it had grown teeth. Whitlock's kid took down 3 bikers. Whitlock's kid fought off a gang in the forest. Whitlock's kid isn't right. There's something wrong with that girl. Jolene heard it at the diner, stopped pouring coffee mid-cup and just stood there, staring at nothing. Her manager asked if she was okay. She set the pot down, untied her apron. I need to go home. She didn't go back to work, quit the night shift, started taking day hours at a diner closer to Harlan. Came home before dark, stopped keeping vodka in the trailer, stopped a lot of things. Mara noticed, didn't say anything, just noticed. 4 days after the forest, a man in a suit appeared at the edge of the property. He didn't knock, didn't call out, just stood there, watching. Mara was in the backyard, practicing footwork. She saw him, stopped. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. He walked closer, stopped at the fence line. You're Mara Whitlock. Mara didn't answer. My name is Marcus Hale. I knew your grandfather a long time ago, before he opened his dojo, before he became the man you knew. Mara's hand moved to her pocket, where the brass coin was. Hale saw the movement, smiled again. That won't help you with me, child. That coin means something to bikers. I'm not a biker. He pulled a photograph from his jacket. Old, creased, faded color. He held it out. Mara didn't take it, just looked. The photo showed a group of men standing in front of a warehouse, young, hard-faced, wearing clothes from another decade. One of them was Henry, younger, no gray in his hair, no lines around his eyes. But the same calm expression, the same way of standing. Your grandfather owed the syndicate a debt when he left. 20 years of service unpaid. You have his skills, better than his, from what I hear. You'll work for us. Clear his debt. Mara looked at Hale. No, Hale's smile vanished. This isn't negotiable. We own this territory. Even the angels know that. You'll work for us, or people you care about will start disappearing. Starting with your mother. Mara's hand tightened around the coin in her pocket. She pulled it out, held it up. Hale looked at it, his face twitched. Where did you get that? Dale Mercer gave it to me. That's an inner circle coin. Only 5 exist. Your grandfather had one. If Mercer gave you his. He stopped, stared at her. You're under blood protection. Mara nodded. Hale was quiet for a long moment. Then he put the photograph away. This complicates things, but not enough. We'll be back. With leverage you can't flip. He turned, walked away, disappeared into the trees. Mara stood there, heart pounding, but her hands were steady. She went inside, found Jolene in the kitchen. Mom, we need to call someone. That night, Dale came back. Not alone. He brought Silas, chapter president of the Central Valley Hells Angels. 60 years old, scar running from his left eye to his jaw, gray beard braided at the end. He walked into the trailer like he'd been there before, sat down at the kitchen table without being asked, looked at Mara, then at Jolene, then back at Mara. Dale told me what happened. Man in a suit, syndicate. Mara nodded. Silas leaned back in his chair. I knew your grandfather 35 years. He saved my life in 91. Blood debt. That debt passes to you. He reached into his vest, pulled out a card, handed it to Jolene. Anything happens, anyone comes around, you call that number. We'll come. Jolene took the card. Her hand was shaking. Why? Why would you do this? Silas looked at her. Because Henry Whitlock was the best man I ever knew. And because that little girl sitting across from me just put 3 scorpions in the ground without breaking a sweat. She's got his blood. We protect our own. He stood up, looked at Mara. You need anything, you let us know. They left. The sound of their bikes faded. Jolene sat at the table, staring at the card. Mara sat beside her. Mom. Jolene looked at her. I'm sorry. For what? For not seeing you, for not being here, for letting him train you in secret because I was too angry and too drunk to care. Mara reached out, took her mother's hand. He was teaching me to survive. Jolene's eyes filled, I know, and I should have been the one doing it. The next morning, Jolene and Mara went to the backyard together. Jolene hadn't trained a day in her life, didn't know a wrist lock from a wristwatch. But she asked, can you teach me? Mara looked at her mother, really looked, saw something there she hadn't seen in years. Hope. She nodded. They started with falling. How to tuck the chin, how to roll with the impact. Jolene fell 20 times that first hour, got up every time, bruised and sore and laughing in a way Mara had never heard her laugh before. The dog sat at the edge of the dirt patch, watching. By the end of the week, Jolene could take a fall without flinching. By the end of the month, she could execute a basic wrist release. Not clean, not the way Mara did it, but enough. Enough to matter. They trained every morning, before Jolene's shift, before Mara went to the woods. Just the two of them, working through the notebook Henry had left behind, slowly, carefully, building something that had been broken for a long time. 10 days after Hale's visit, he came back, not to the trailer, to the woods. Mara was alone, practicing knots. The dog was with her. It started growling before Mara heard the footsteps. She turned. Hale stepped into the clearing, hands in his pockets, same suit, same cold smile. I told you we'd be back. Mara stood up. Where's my mother? Safe for now. Hale pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. Jolene, tied to a chair, bruise on her cheek, eyes wide. Mara's breath caught. Hale put the phone away. Trade. You for her. Midnight. Old sawmill on Route 12. Come alone or she dies. He walked away, disappeared into the trees. Mara stood there, the dog pressed against her leg. She looked down at it. We need to go. Fast. She ran back to the trailer. Found the card Silas had given Jolene. Dialed the number. Dale answered. Mara told him everything. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, he said, we'll be there in an hour. Mara hung up, sat down, waited. 53 minutes later, 5 bikes pulled into the lot. Dale, Silas, 3 others. They came into the trailer. Silas looked at Mara. You're not going in there alone. Mara met his eyes. Yes, I am. If they see you, they'll kill her. You stay 200 yards out. Ready, but I go in alone. Silas started to argue. Mara cut him off. Henry trained me for this. Trust me. Dale put his hand on Silas's shoulder. She just took down 3 scorpions in the woods. Let her do this. Silas looked at Mara for a long moment, then nodded. All right, kid, your play. But we're close. Anything goes wrong, we're coming in. Mara nodded. They rode out together, 5 bikes and a girl who weighed 72 pounds. They stopped 200 yards from the old sawmill. Mara got off, walked the rest of the way alone. The dog followed. She didn't send it back. The sawmill had been abandoned for 20 years. Rusted metal beams, broken windows, the smell of rot and oil. Mara walked through the main entrance. Inside, the space opened up. High ceiling, shadows everywhere. Jolene was in the center, tied to a chair, bruised but alive. 6 men stood around her. Hale in the front, smiling. Smart girl. Now you work for us. Mommy goes free. Mara walked toward the center, slowly. The concrete floor was stained dark in places, oil or blood or both. Her footsteps echoed. She looked at Jolene. Her mother's eyes were wet, pleading. Mara wanted to run to her, wanted to cut the ropes and get her out of there. But she kept walking, slow, steady, like Henry had taught her. Rid the room, find the leverage. She stopped 10 feet from Hale, looked at him, then at the men around him, counting. 6 plus Hale, 7 total, all of them bigger than her, all of them armed. She looked back at Hale. I'll work for you. One condition. Let me say goodbye. Hale studied her, then nodded. Make it quick. Mara walked to Jolene, knelt down beside the chair, wrapped her arms around her mother, put her mouth close to Jolene's ear. When I moved, she whispered, drop and roll left. Jolene's body went rigid. Mara pulled back, looked at her mother's face. Jolene's eyes were wide, terrified, but she nodded, just barely. Mara stood, turned to face Hale. He was close now, 5 feet, smiling like he'd already won, ready to go to work. Mara took a breath, let it out. Henry's voice in her head. Stay calm. Whatever happens, stay calm. You know what to do. She did. Her hand shot out, grabbed Hale's wrist. He wasn't expecting it, wasn't ready. She twisted. Kotegaeshi, perfect, clean, the way Henry had shown her 1,000 times. Hale's wrist torqued. His body followed. He stumbled forward, off balance. Mara swept his legs, low, fast. He went down hard. His head hit a metal support beam on the way. The sound was wet, final. He didn't get up. Chaos erupted. The 6 men moved, reached for weapons, but they were too slow. The angels came through the windows, through the doors, fast, silent, efficient. Gunfire cracked through the space, sharp, loud, over in seconds. 4 syndicate men went down. 2 ran, made it to the back exit before anyone could stop them. Dale was already at Jolene's chair, cutting the ropes with a knife. Mara stayed between her mother and the men on the ground, shielding the way Henry had taught her. Protect what matters. The shooting stopped. The space went quiet except for the ringing in everyone's ears. Silas walked to Hale, checked for a pulse, found one. Barely. He looked at Mara. You could have killed him. Mara met his eyes. I'm 8. I don't kill people. Silas smiled. It was the first real smile she'd ever seen from him. You're all right, kid. Jolene was free. She grabbed Mara, pulled her close, held on, shaking. Mara wrapped her arms around her mother. It's okay, we're okay. Dale and the others secured the space, made sure no one else was coming. Silas dragged Hale to a sitting position. Lean close. You listening? Hale's eyes opened, unfocused, blood running down his face. Silas spoke slowly, clearly. Mara Whitlock is under Angel's blood protection. The girl is off limits. You spread that to your bosses. You spread it to everyone. Anyone comes for her again, we burn the syndicate to the ground. Understand? Hale nodded, weak, barely there. Silas let him drop, stood up. Let's go. They left, all of them. Jolene held Mara's hand the entire walk back to the bikes. The dog trotted beside them. When they reached the lot, Silas looked at Mara. You used yourself as bait. Mara nodded. Henry taught me. Read the room. Find the leverage. Silas put his hand on her shoulder. Heavy, warm, the way Henry used to. Your grandfather would be proud. They rode back to the trailer, the sound of engines in the night, the stars cold and bright overhead. When they arrived, Jolene and Mara sat on the steps, the dog between them. Jolene put her arm around her daughter. I thought I lost you. Mara leaned into her. You didn't. Jolene kissed the top of her head. I'm done running. From now on, we face things together. Mara nodded. Together. The bikes pulled away one by one. Dale was the last to leave. He looked at Mara. You ever need anything? Anything at all? You call. Mara nodded. Thank you. Dale smiled, rode off. The sound faded. The night went quiet. Jolene and Mara sat there for a long time. Just the two of them and the dog. Not talking, just being together. Finally home. 2 months passed. Winter settled over Harlan like a held breath. Snow came early, covered the trailer park in white that lasted 3 days before turning gray. Jolene kept working day shifts at the diner, came home every night, cooked dinner, sat with Mara at the table and asked about her day. Really asked, really listened. Mara told her things, small things. A bird she saw in the woods, a knot she'd finally gotten right after weeks of trying. Jolene listened to all of it. The vodka bottles stayed gone. The trailer stayed clean. And every morning before the sun came up, they trained together in the backyard. Jolene was getting better. Not good, but better. She could fall without hurting herself, could execute a wrist release if she had time to think about it. Mara was patient with her, the way Henry had been patient with Mara. Teaching wasn't about being perfect. It was about being present, showing up, trying. Jolene showed up every day. The news about Mara spread beyond Harlan. Word traveled through the clubs, the chapters, the networks that connected men who lived outside the law. A girl, 8 years old, took down scorpions, put syndicate operatives in the dirt, protected by the angel's highest oath. The stories grew, got bigger, more dangerous. Some of it was true. Most of it wasn't. Mara didn't care. She went to the woods every day, practiced, trained, stayed ready. The dog, which she'd named Scout, went with her, stayed close, watched her back. At night, she sat in her room with Henry's notebook, read the notes he'd written, the diagrams, the small encouragements he'd scribbled in the margins. You're faster than you think. Trust your instincts. Stay calm. She could almost hear his voice when she read them, almost feel his hand on her shoulder, almost believe he was still here, teaching her, guiding her, keeping her safe. One afternoon in late November, Jolene came home early. Mara was in the backyard, working through a series of throws with a heavy bag she'd rigged up between two posts. Jolene stood in the doorway, watching. When Mara finished, Jolene walked out, sat down on the steps. Mara sat beside her. Jolene was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I went to your grandfather's dojo today." Mara looked at her. "Why?" "Because I wanted to see it. I hadn't been there since before you were born. It's falling apart. Roof leaking, windows broken. But the mat room is still there. Still smells like sweat and canvas." She paused. "I think we should open it again." Mara blinked. "Open it?" Jolene nodded. "Not for money. For the kids in this town who need what your grandfather gave you. A place to learn. A place to be strong. I can't teach them, but you can." Mara stared at her mother. "I'm 8. Jolene smiled. "Henry started teaching you when you were 5. You're the best student he ever had. His words, not mine. You know more than most adults ever will, and you know how to teach it. I've watched you with me. You're patient. You're clear. You don't get frustrated when I mess up. That's a gift, baby. Don't waste it." Mara looked down at her hands. "I don't know if I can." Jolene reached out, took her daughter's hand. "You can, and I'll be there. Every step. We'll do it together." It took 3 weeks to make the dojo usable. Jolene paid for repairs out of her savings. New roof, fixed windows, cleaned the mats, painted the walls. Silas sent 2 of his brothers to help. They didn't ask why, just showed up with tools and worked until the job was done. Dale came by twice, brought supplies, brought a new heavy bag to replace the one that had rotted through, brought something else too, a framed photo of Henry standing in the center of the mat room, arms crossed, calm expression. The same expression Mara saw every time she closed her eyes. Dale hung it on the wall near the entrance. "So everyone who walks in here knows who built this place." Mara stood in front of it for a long time. "Thank you, Grandpa." The words were barely a whisper, but she meant them. The dojo opened the first week of December. Jolene put up flyers around town. Free self-defense classes for kids. No experience necessary. Mara didn't think anyone would come, but they did. A handful at first. Shy kids, nervous kids, kids who'd been bullied or ignored or told they weren't strong enough. Mara taught them the way Henry had taught her. Started with falling, how to land without breaking, how to roll with the impact, how to breathe when your body wanted to panic. She didn't raise her voice, didn't push them, just showed them, over and over until they got it. And when they did, she moved on to the next thing. Balance, leverage, reading weight, the basics, the foundation, the things that mattered. Jolene sat in the corner, watching, sometimes helping, mostly just being there, present, the way she should have been all along. Scout lay by the door, calm, alert, watching over all of them. One Saturday morning, a girl walked in, 6 years old, small, thin, eyes that didn't look at anything directly. Jolene greeted her, asked her name. The girl whispered it so quietly Jolene had to lean down to hear. Her name was Emma. Jolene brought her to the mat, introduced her to Mara. Emma looked at Mara the way someone looks at something they're not sure is real. "You're the girl everyone talks about." Mara nodded. "I'm Mara. Do you want to learn?" Emma nodded. Mara smiled. "Okay, let me teach you how to fall." They worked for an hour. Emma fell 20 times, got up 20 times. By the end, she was smiling. A real smile. The kind that starts small and grows until it takes over your whole face. Mara saw herself in that smile. Saw the girl she used to be. The one who found something in Henry's dojo that she couldn't find anywhere else. A place to be strong. A place to matter. When Emma left, she hugged Mara. "Thank you," Mara hugged her back. "See you next week." That night, me and Mara sat on the steps behind the trailer. Scout beside her. The brass coin hung from a cord around her neck. She'd started wearing it after the sawmill. A reminder of protection, of promises kept, of men who honored their debts even when the world told them not to. She could hear Jolene inside, humming, something Mara hadn't heard in years, maybe ever. She looked up at the sky, stars coming out one by one, cold air that smelled like snow. She thought about Henry, about everything he taught her, not just the techniques, the philosophy behind them. Strength isn't about power, it's about knowing when to bend and when to break them. She understood now. Henry hadn't been teaching her to fight. He'd been teaching her to protect what mattered, to stand when others ran, to stay calm when the world tried to make her panic, to be the kind of person people could count on when everything else fell apart. A week before Christmas, Dale showed up at the dojo. Mara was alone, cleaning the mats. He walked in, looked around, nodded. Henry would be proud. Mara stopped, looked at him. "You think so?" Dale smiled. "I know so." He reached into his vest, pulled out an envelope, handed it to her. "What is this? Open it." Mara opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten. She recognized the writing immediately. Henry's. Her hand started shaking. "Where did you get this?" Dale sat down on the edge of the mat. "Henry gave it to me 25 years ago, told me to hold on to it, said if I ever met the student he was waiting for, I'd know. And I should give them this. I didn't understand what he meant. Not until I met you." Mara looked down at the letter, started reading. "Mara, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And Dale found you. Good. That means you're exactly who I thought you'd be. Strong, calm, ready. I want you to know something. I didn't train you because I thought you needed to know how to fight. I trained you because I saw in you what I used to have. Before the scars, before the mistakes, before I became the man who couldn't save his own daughter from the life I'd left behind. You have a gift, Mara, not for violence, for protection, for seeing what needs to be done and doing it without hesitation, without fear. That's rare, rarer than you know. The world is going to try to take that from you. It's going to try to make you doubt yourself, to make you think you're too small, too young, too weak. Don't listen. You're none of those things. You're the strongest student I ever trained, and you're going to do things I never could. Protect people I couldn't protect. Save lives I couldn't save. That's your path, not because I chose it for you, because it's who you are. Stay calm. Whatever happens, stay calm. I'll be watching. Always. Henry." Mara's vision blurred. She wiped her eyes, folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, looked at Dale. "Thank you." Dale stood up. "Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing." He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "One more thing. Silas wants you to know, if you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call. We're family now." Mara nodded. Dale left. Mara sat there for a long time, holding the envelope, feeling the weight of Henry's words, the weight of what he'd seen in her, what he'd believed she could become. She stood up, put the letter in her backpack, finished cleaning the mats, locked up, walked home. Scout at her side, the stars bright overhead, the air cold and clean. Christmas came and went. Jolene and Mara spent it together. Just the two of them. No vodka, no silence. Just talking, laughing, being present. Jolene gave Mara a new G. White, clean, the kind Henry used to wear. Mara gave Jolene a framed photo. The two of them in the dojo, smiling. Jolene cried when she saw it, hung it on the wall next to the photo of Henry. 3 generations, connected by something stronger than blood, by choice, by effort, by showing up every day and trying to be better than they were the day before. The dojo grew. More kids came. Word spread that the Whitlaw girl was teaching, that she was good, patient, kind, tough when she needed to be, gentle when it mattered. Parents started dropping their kids off, trusting Mara with something precious, their children's safety, their children's strength. Mara didn't take that lightly. She taught every class like it was the most important thing she'd ever do, because it was. Winter turned to spring, the snow melted, the woods turned green again. Mara kept training, kept teaching, kept moving forward. Jolene stayed sober, stayed present, stayed strong. They built something together. Not just a dojo, a life, one that made sense, one that mattered, one that honored the man who'd started it all. Henry Whitlock, teacher, father, grandfather. The man who saw a 5-year-old girl and knew she'd be unstoppable, not because of strength, because of heart. One evening in late April, Mara and Jolene sat on the steps behind the trailer. Scout between them. The sky was orange and pink, the air warm. Jolene looked at her daughter. "You know what I realized today?" Mara looked at her. "What?" "I realized I'm not afraid anymore. Of the past, of the future, of anything. Because I know that no matter what happens, you and I can handle it. Together." Mara smiled. Together. Jolene put her arm around her. "I love you, baby." Mara leaned into her mother. "I love you too, Mom." A bike pulled up at the edge of the property. Dale. He'd been checking in once a week, making sure everything was okay, making sure the syndicate stayed away, making sure Mara and Jolene knew they weren't alone. He didn't always come to the door. Sometimes he just sat on his bike, watching, a silent guardian. Tonight he got off, walked over, sat down on the steps beside them. "Everything good?" Mara nodded. "Everything's good." Dale looked out at the woods. "Henry used to sit here, after your sessions. He'd watch you walk home, make sure you got there safe." Jolene's eyes widened. "He did." Dale nodded. "Every single time. Didn't matter if it was raining or snowing or dark. He sat right here, watched until you were inside. Then he'd leave." Jolene's hand went to her mouth. "I didn't know." Dale looked at her. "He loved you both, more than anything. He just didn't know how to show it, not after everything that happened." Jolene wiped her eyes. "I wish I'd known. I wish I'd let him back in before it was too late." Dale put his hand on her shoulder. "You're letting him back in now. Through her." He nodded at Mara. "That's what matters." They sat there for a while, the three of them, plus Scout, watching the sun go down, watching the stars come out, feeling the weight of everything that had happened, everything they'd survived, everything they'd built. When Dale finally stood to leave, he looked at Mara. "You're doing good, kid. Real good." Mara smiled. "Thanks, Dale." He got on his bike, rode away. The sound of the engine faded into the distance. Jolene stood, held out her hand. "Come on, let's go inside." Mara took her hand. They walked into the trailer together. Gout followed. The door closed. The lights came on. Inside there was warmth. There was safety. There was home. Outside the woods stood silent. The same woods where Henry had taught Mara to fall, to move, to stay calm. The same woods where she'd saved a man's life, where she'd faced down men who wanted to hurt her, where she'd learned what she was capable of. The woods were still there, would always be there, waiting, ready, just like Mara. Just like Henry had trained her to be. Years would pass. Mara would grow, would teach hundreds of students, would become the woman Henry knew she'd be. Strong, calm, unstoppable, not because of power, because of heart. But tonight she was still 8, still learning, still figuring out who she was and what she was meant to do. And that was okay, because she wasn't alone. She had her mother, she had Dale, she had Silas and the Brotherhood, she had Scout, and she had Henry's words, his lessons, his belief in her. That was enough, more than enough. She stood in her room, the brass coin on her dresser, Henry's letter beside it. She picked up the letter, read it again, slowly, carefully, absorbing every word. When she finished, she folded it, put it back in the envelope. put the envelope in a drawer where it would be safe, where she could find it whenever she needed to remember. Remember who she was. Remember why she was doing this. Remember that she was the strongest student Henry ever trained. Not because he said so, because she proved it every single day. She turned off the light, climbed into bed. Scout jumped up beside her, curled into a ball. Mara put her hand on the dog's back, felt the rise and fall of its breathing, closed her eyes, and in the darkness she heard Henry's voice. Not a memory, not a ghost, just the echo of everything he'd taught her, everything he'd believed, everything he'd known she would become. Stay calm, Mara. Whatever happens, stay calm. She smiled, took a breath, let it out slow. And she did. She stayed calm, just like he'd taught her, just like she always would. Outside her window, the stars wheeled overhead. The same stars Henry had pointed out to her once when she was 6, teaching her how to navigate by them, how to find her way home even when everything looked lost. She remembered that night, the two of them standing in the backyard, Henry's hand on her shoulder, his voice quiet. See that constellation there? That's Cassiopeia. You can always find north from her, no matter how turned around you get. No matter how dark it is, she's always there, always pointing the way home. Mara opened her eyes, looked out the window, found Cassiopeia in the sky, 5 bright points forming a W, just like Henry had shown her. She was still there, still pointing the way. Mara closed her eyes again, and this time she slept. The dojo became the center of Mara's world in ways she hadn't expected. By February, she was teaching 3 classes a week, Monday and Wednesday evenings, Saturday mornings. The kids ranged from 5 to 14. Some came because their parents made them. Others came because they wanted to. Mara could tell the difference within the first 5 minutes. The ones who wanted to be there had a hunger in their eyes, a need for something they couldn't name. She recognized it because she'd felt it herself 3 years ago when Henry first brought her to the mat. There was a boy named Carter, 10 years old, skinny, wore the same jacket every day even though it was too small for him. He never looked anyone in the eye, never spoke unless Mara asked him a direct question. But when she showed him a technique, he absorbed it like water into sand, fast. Oh wait, by the 3rd week he could execute a proper wrist release. By the 5th, he was helping the younger kids learn how to fall. Mara watched him work with a girl half his size, showing her how to tuck her chin, how to protect her head. His voice was soft, patient, kind. She saw Henry in that kindness, saw what teaching could do to a person, how it could turn pain into purpose. There was a girl named Becky, 12, tall for her age, awkward in her own skin. She came to class angry. Mara could see it in the way she moved. Too fast, too hard, like she was trying to prove something to everyone in the room. Mara didn't tell her to slow down, didn't tell her to relax. She just paired her with Carter for drills. Let them work together. Carter's calm balanced Becky's anger. After 3 weeks, Becky stopped moving like she was fighting the world, started moving like she was part of it. One evening after class, she stayed behind, helped Mara put the mats away. Thank you, that's all she said. But Mara heard everything underneath it. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for this place. Mara smiled. See you Monday. Emma, the 6-year-old who'd walked in that first Saturday, became a constant. She came to every class, never missed, never complained. She was small and quiet and moved like she was afraid of taking up space. But week by week, that changed. Her shoulders straightened. Her voice got louder. She started looking people in the eye when she talked to them. One day, her mother came in to watch, stood at the back of the room with tears running down her face. After class, she pulled Mara aside. My daughter was being bullied at school every day for 6 months. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. I didn't know what to do. Then she started coming here. She's different now. stronger. The woman's voice broke. You gave me my daughter back. Mara didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Emma's a good student. The woman hugged her. Mara stood there stiff and uncomfortable until the woman let go. When she left, Mara sat down on the edge of the mat. Jolene was sweeping in the corner. She'd seen the whole thing. You okay, baby? Mara nodded. I think so. Jolene stopped sweeping, came over, sat down beside her. You know what your grandfather used to say? Mara shook her head. He said the only thing worth doing in this life is making people stronger than they were when you found them. Everything else is just noise. Mara looked at her mother. Did he really say that? Jolene smiled. Word for word. First time I ever brought a friend to meet him. I was 7. The friend was scared of everything. Spiders, dark, loud noises. Henry spent 2 hours with her, showed her how to breathe through fear, how to face it instead of running. By the time we left, she wasn't scared anymore. Or maybe she was, but she knew she could handle it. Mara was quiet for a moment. I miss him. Jolene put her arm around her daughter. I know. Me too. March came in cold. Snow fell heavy one weekend and stayed on the ground for a week. The trailer park turned into a maze of gray slush and frozen mud. Mara still went to the woods every day. Scouts still followed. They'd walk through the snow in silence. Mara practicing her footwork, working through forms, checking the knots she'd tied between trees, making sure the ropes were still tight, still secure. She didn't need them anymore. Not really. But keeping them up felt important. Like maintaining a connection to Henry, to the training, to the person she'd been when he was still alive. One afternoon, she found a deer carcass near the creek. Fresh kill. Something big had taken it down. Mountain lion, probably. The tracks in the snow were clear. Large paw prints leading away into the thicker trees. Mara studied them, measured the stride, the depth, the spacing. Henry had taught her to read tracks, to understand what they were saying. This cat was big, healthy, moving with confidence. She followed the prints for about half a mile, then stopped. The cat had bedded down in a thick stand of pine. She could see the depression in the snow where it had rested, could smell the musk. She didn't go closer, didn't need to. She'd learned what she wanted to know. The cat was here, in her woods, sharing the space. That was okay. There was room for both of them. She turned around, walked back the way she'd come. Scout stayed close, nervous. The dog could smell the predator, too. When they got back to the deer carcass, Mara stopped, looked at it for a long moment. Then she dragged it 50 yards away from the creek, away from the trails, left it for the cat to find again. A gift, a gesture of respect. This is your forest, too. We can share it. She wiped her hands in the snow, headed home. By April, the dojo had 23 regular students. The mat room that had felt too big when they first opened now felt crowded during Saturday morning class. Jolene started talking about expansion, maybe knocking down the wall to the storage room, making more space. Mara wasn't sure. She liked it the way it was. Small, intimate, a place where everyone knew everyone else, where she could give each student individual attention. But she understood what Jolene was saying. More space meant more students. More students meant more kids getting what Emma got, what Carter got, what Becky got, a place to be strong, a place to matter. They decided to wait, see how the summer went. If the numbers kept growing, they'd talk about it again in the fall. One evening in late April, Mara was closing up the dojo. The last student had left an hour ago. She'd stayed behind to work on her own training, practicing throws on the heavy bag, working through the more advanced techniques in Henry's notebook, the ones he'd never gotten around to teaching her before he died. She was trying to figure out a particularly complex wrist lock when she heard a bike pull up outside. She stopped, listened. The engine cut out. Boots on gravel. The door opened. Dale walked in. He looked tired, older than usual. Mara set down the notebook. You okay? Dale nodded, sat down on the bench near the door. Yeah, just a long day. He looked around the dojo, at the fresh paint, the clean mats, the photo of Henry on the wall. This place looks good. Mara sat down beside him. Thanks to you and Silas. Couldn't have done it without the help. Dale waved that away. Squay, that's what family does. They sat in silence for a minute. Then Dale spoke. I came by because I wanted to tell you something. Mara waited. The syndicate put out word last week. You're off limits. Officially, anyone who touches you or your mother answers to them. And since they know the angels will come down on anyone who tries, nobody's going to try. Mara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. So it's over, Dale nodded. It's over. You're safe. Mara felt something release in her chest, a tension she'd been carrying since the sawmill, since Hale, since the moment she'd realized the world was bigger and more dangerous than the woods behind her trailer. Thank you, Dale looked at her. You did this, kid. Not me, not Silas. You. You stood up when you could have run. You protected your mother when you could have saved yourself. You earned this safety. Don't forget that. Mara nodded. She wouldn't forget. Dale stayed for another hour. They talked about small things, the dojo, the students, the woods. He told her stories about Henry, things Mara had never heard, how Henry had once stopped a bar fight by walking into the middle of it and standing there, just standing, not saying a word, until everyone got so uncomfortable they stopped swinging. How he'd taught a cop who later became sheriff, how he'd refused to charge money to anyone who couldn't afford it, how he'd spent every Christmas morning at the diner buying breakfast for anyone who came in alone. Mara absorbed all of it, building a picture of her grandfather that was bigger than her memories, more complete. When Dale finally stood to leave, he pulled something from his vest, a small leather pouch. He handed it to Mara. What is it? Open it. Inside was a patch, the Hells Angels wing skull, the colors. Dale pointed to it. That's not for you to wear. You're not a member. You never will be. But I want you to have it. Keep it somewhere safe. If you ever need us, you show that to any angel anywhere in the country. They'll help you. No questions asked. Mara held the patch carefully, like it might break. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just promise me you'll stay smart. Stay safe. Keep doing what you're doing. Mara promised. Dale nodded, walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Henry was right about you. You're the strongest student he ever trained. Not because of what you can do, because of who you are. Don't ever lose that. He left. The sound of his bike faded into the distance. Mara sat there holding the patch, feeling its weight, understanding what it meant. She wasn't alone, would never be alone. She had a family now, one that extended far beyond this small town, beyond these woods. A family bound by honor and blood and a dead man's legacy. Summer came. School let out. The dojo got busier. Kids who couldn't come during the school year started showing up. Mara added a Thursday evening class, then a Tuesday morning class for the younger ones. Jolene helped. She wasn't skilled enough to teach techniques, but she could supervise, could make sure the kids were safe, could answer questions, could be present, and presence mattered more than skill when it came to kids. They needed to know someone was there. Someone was watching. Someone cared. Jolene cared. She'd started to understand what Henry had been building all those years. Not just a dojo, a community, a place where people could come and be better than they were. She wanted to be part of that, wanted to help build it. For Henry, for Mara, for herself. One Saturday in June, a man walked into the dojo during class. Mara didn't recognize him. Mid-30s, clean cut, button-down shirt and jeans. He stood at the back and watched. Didn't say anything, just watched. After class, he approached Mara. I'm Ryan Fletcher. I teach phys ed at the middle school. I've been hearing about what you're doing here. Wanted to see it for myself. Mara wiped sweat from her face, and Ryan smiled. And it's impressive, really impressive. I've been teaching kids for 10 years, and I've never seen them respond to someone the way they respond to you. You've got a gift. Mara didn't know what to say to that, so she just shrugged. I'm teaching what my grandfather taught me. Ryan nodded. I can see that. Listen, I know this might sound strange coming from someone you just met, but I'd like to help. If you'll let me, I can't do what you do, but I can handle admin stuff. Scheduling, paperwork, outreach, whatever you need. Mara studied him. Why? Why would you want to help? Ryan's expression went serious. Because I've got students who need this. Kids who are falling through the cracks. Kids who are angry or scared or lost. And I don't have the tools to help them, but you do. So if I can make it easier for you to do what you're doing, that helps them. And that's why I became a teacher in the first place. Mara thought about it, looked at Jolene, who was putting away mats in the corner. Her mother nodded. Mara looked back at Ryan. Okay, let's try it. We can always stop if it doesn't work out. Ryan smiled. Fair enough. Ryan turned out to be exactly what the dojo needed. He set up a website, created a schedule that made sense, reached out to parents, connected with the school district. Within a month, enrollment doubled. Mara had to add 2 more classes just to keep up. She started training assistant instructors. Carter and Becky were the first. They were old enough and skilled enough to help with the younger kids, to demonstrate techniques, to supervise drills. They took to it naturally, the same way Mara had taken to teaching. By July, the dojo was running 6 classes a week. The storage room wall came down, the space expanded, more mats went in, more equipment. Jolene quit her job at the diner, started working the dojo full-time, managing finances, handling registrations, being present for every single class. She and Mara had never been closer, never talked more, never understood each other better. The thing that had broken them, Henry's death and the secrets around it, had somehow become the thing that brought them back together, stronger than before. One evening in late July, Mara was in the backyard, working through forms in the fading light. Shout lay on the steps, watching. The air was warm. Cicadas sang in the trees. The smell of pine and sun-baked earth. Mara moved through a sequence Henry had taught her when she was 7. A complex series of movements that flowed from one to the next without pause. Strike, block, sweep, roll, rise, strike again. It required perfect balance, perfect timing, perfect breath control. She'd practiced it 1,000 times, maybe more. But tonight something clicked. The movements stopped being separate techniques, started being one continuous motion, like water, like wind, inevitable and smooth. When she finished, she stood there breathing, heart steady, mind clear. She understood something she hadn't understood before. Henry hadn't been teaching her to fight. He'd been teaching her to flow, to move with the world instead of against it, to find the path of least resistance and follow it all the way through. That was the secret. Not strength, not speed, not technique. Flow, adaptation, staying calm while everything around you moved. She smiled, sat down on the steps beside Scout. The dog put its head on her lap. She scratched behind its ears. Thanks, Grandpa. The words went out into the evening air, into the woods beyond, into the space where Henry used to be. She liked to think he heard them, wherever he was. August brought heat, the kind that made the air shimmer above the pavement, that made the woods feel close and heavy. Mara still went every day, still practiced. But she went early, before the sun climbed too high, before the heat became unbearable. Scout didn't always come anymore. Some mornings the dog would look at Mara like you're going out, in that Mara would laugh. Stay here, I'll be back. Scout would curl up in the shade under the trailer and sleep. Mara didn't mind going alone. She'd been going alone long before Scout came along. The woods were hers, had always been hers. She knew every tree, every rock, every place where the ground dipped or rose. She could navigate them blindfolded. Sometimes she did, just to prove she could. She'd tie a bandana over her eyes and walk, feeling her way, using sound, smell, the temperature of the air, the texture of the ground under her feet. Henry had taught her this, called it sensory navigation, said it would save her life someday if she ever found herself in the dark. Mara didn't know if she believed that, but she practiced it anyway, because Henry had asked her to, because it made her better, sharper, more aware. One morning in mid-August, Mara was deep in the woods, farther than she usually went. She'd been following a game trail for about an hour, curious where it led. The trail ended at a small clearing. In the center was an old stone foundation, remains of a building that hadn't existed in decades, maybe longer. Trees grew up through the middle of it, moss covered the stones, but you could still see the outline. Four walls, a doorway, a chimney on the north side. Mara walked around it, studying, wondering what it had been, who had lived here, why they'd left. She sat down on one of the fallen stones, took out her water bottle, drank. The forest was quiet around her, just wind and birds and the distant sound of the creek. She closed her eyes, listened. This had been someone's home once. Someone had built this place stone by stone, had lived in it, cooked meals, slept, woke up to the same sounds she was hearing now, and then they'd left. Or died, and the forest had taken it back. Just had taken. Mara thought about that, about how nothing lasts, how even the strongest things eventually break down and return to the earth, but also about how some things leave marks. This foundation would be here for another 100 years, maybe more, long after everyone who remembered the building was gone, long after Mara herself was gone. Some things endure, not in their original form, but in the traces they leave behind. She stood up, looked at the foundation one more time, then headed home. She didn't tell anyone about it, kept it as a secret, a place that was hers alone. September came. School started again. The Tuesday morning class ended, but the evening classes stayed full. Mara was teaching 4 nights a week now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday morning. Carter and Becky helped with 3 of those. Emma, who just turned 7, was helping with the youngest kids, showing them how to tie their belts, how to bow, how to stand in ready position. She was patient with them, kind. Mara watched her work and saw herself 3 years ago, saw what Henry must have seen, that spark, that hunger to learn and to teach, that need to pass something on. The dojo had become more than a place to train. It had become a family. The kids looked out for each other, helped each other, celebrated each other's progress. When Carter finally executed a perfect throw for the first time, the whole class cheered. When Emma got her first colored belt, a yellow stripe Mara had sewn onto her white belt herself, everyone clapped. When Becky helped a new student overcome his fear of falling, Mara pulled her aside after class. "You're good at this." Becky looked uncomfortable. "At what?" "Teaching, helping people. You've got the patience for it." Becky shrugged. "I just remember what it was like when I started. How scared I was. How angry. I don't want anyone else to feel that way." Mara smiled. "That's exactly why you're good at it." October brought color to the woods. The aspens turned gold. The maples turned red and orange. The forest became a patchwork of color that took Mara's breath away every time she walked into it. She'd grown up in these woods, had seen this transformation every year of her life, but it never got old, never stopped being beautiful. She started bringing her students out here. One Saturday a month, instead of training in the dojo, they'd hike into the woods. Mara would teach them the things Henry had taught her, how to navigate, how to read tracks, how to move quietly, how to find water, how to build a fire, how to stay calm when you're lost. The kids loved it. Parents were skeptical at first, worried about safety, but Jolene and Ryan handled that, explained the value, the life skills, the confidence building. After the first hike, when all the kids came back tired and dirty and grinning, the parents stopped worrying, started asking when the next one was. On one of these hikes, Mara took them to the clearing where she'd found Dale. She didn't tell them what had happened there, just showed them the tree, pointed out the branch. This is a good spot to practice knots. Strong branch, good height. They spent an hour working with rope, learning bowlines and clove hitches and figure eights. Carter asked why they needed to know this. Mara thought about how to answer. Because someday you might need to secure something, might need to rescue something, might need to save someone's life. And if you know your knots, you can do it fast and you can do it right. The kids nodded, kept practicing. By the end of the hour, every one of them could tie a bowline with their eyes closed. Mara watched them work and felt something swell in her chest. Pride, purpose, connection. These kids trusted her, believed in her, looked up to her. She was 8 years old and she had become exactly what Henry had trained her to be, not a fighter, a protector, a teacher, a person who made others stronger. November brought the first real snow, 6 inches overnight. The town woke up white and quiet. School was canceled. The dojo was canceled. Mara and Jolene spent the day inside, drinking hot chocolate, playing cards, talking about nothing and everything. Jolene told stories about her childhood, about growing up with Henry as a father, how strict he'd been, how distant, how she'd never felt like she could make him proud no matter what she did. I was always trying to get his attention, Jolene said, always trying to make him see me, but he was so focused on the dojo, on his students, on everyone except me. That's why I fell for Ethan, because he saw me, really saw me, made me feel like I mattered. Mara listened, didn't interrupt. Jolene continued, I know now that your grandfather was trying to protect me, that everything he did came from love. But when you're 18 and angry, you don't see that. You just see rejection. So I rejected him back, pushed him away, kept you from him. And by the time I realized how wrong I was, he was gone. She wiped her eyes. I wasted so much time being angry, time I can't get back. Mara reached across the table, took her mother's hand. You're not wasting time now. Jolene smiled through tears. No, I'm not. That night, Mara dreamed about Henry. They were in the dojo, working through techniques. Henry was showing her something new, a throw she'd never seen before. Complex, beautiful, requiring perfect timing. He demonstrated it once, then stepped back. Your turn. Mara tried, failed, tried again, failed again. She looked at Henry, frustrated. I can't do it. Henry smiled. Not yet, but you will. Just keep trying. The dream shifted. Suddenly they were in the woods, walking side by side, Henry's hand on her shoulder. You're doing good, Mara. Better than I ever did. I'm proud of you. Mara looked up at him. Really? Henry nodded. Really? The dream shifted again. Now she was alone, standing in a clearing she didn't recognize. The sun was setting. The sky was on fire, orange and red and gold. Henry's voice came from somewhere behind her, but when she turned, he wasn't there. Just his voice. Stay calm. Whatever happens, stay calm. I'll always be with you, always. Mara woke up. The room was dark. Scout was curled at the foot of her bed. She could hear Jolene moving around in the kitchen, starting coffee, getting ready for the day. Mara lay there for a moment, holding on to the dream, holding on to Henry's voice. Then she got up, got dressed, started her day. December came fast. Christmas decorations went up around town. The dojo stayed open through the holidays. Some kids needed it more during winter break than during the school year. Needed a place to go, something to do, someone to be with. Mara understood that. She'd been one of those kids not that long ago. The dojo had been her refuge when home was too quiet and school was too loud. Now she was providing that refuge for others, the circle continuing. On Christmas Eve, Mara and Jolene closed the dojo early, went home, made dinner together, pasta with sauce from a jar, garlic bread, salad, nothing fancy, but it was theirs. They ate at the table, not in front of the TV, not in separate rooms, together. After dinner, they sat on the couch. Jolene had bought a small tree, decorated it with lights and a few ornaments. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had the year before, more than they'd had in a long time. Mara looked at the tree, at the lights reflecting in the window, at her mother beside her. This is nice, Jolene put her arm around her daughter. Yeah, it is. They sat there for a while. Quiet, comfortable, Scout asleep at their feet. Finally, Jolene spoke. I got you something. Mara looked at her. You didn't have to do that, I know, but I wanted to. Jolene pulled a small box from under the tree, handed it to Mara. Open it. Inside was a bracelet, simple, leather cord with a small brass charm. The charm was engraved with a symbol. Mara recognized it, the kanji for strength. Henry had it tattooed on his forearm, wore it every day of his life. Where did you get this? Jolene's voice was soft. I had it made, using the same symbol your grandfather had. I thought you should have it, something to remember him by. Mara's eyes filled. She put the bracelet on. It fit perfectly. Thank you, Mom. Jolene hugged her. You're welcome, baby. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, connected by grief and love and the slow, hard work of healing. Winter deepened. January brought cold that made the inside of the trailer frost over, made walking to the dojo an exercise in endurance. But Mara never missed a class, never canceled. The kids showed up, most of them, the ones who could, and for those who couldn't make it because of weather or sick parents or broken down cars, Mara made note, reached out, made sure they were okay, made sure they knew they were welcome back whenever they could return. Ryan had taught her that, the importance of connection, of letting people know they mattered, that they were seen. It was a small thing, but small things added up. By February, the dojo had 47 regular students. The mat room was packed during Saturday morning class. Wall-to-wall kids, all ages, all skill levels, working together, helping each other, learning from each other, growing together. Jolene stood in the corner watching one Saturday and started crying. Ryan, who was helping manage the crowd, noticed. You okay? Jolene nodded. I'm fine. It's just, she gestured at the room. This is what he wanted. This is what my father spent his whole life building. And it died with him. But now it's back. Better than before because of her. She pointed at Mara, who was in the center of the room, demonstrating a sweep to a group of younger kids. Ryan smiled. She's something special. Jolene wiped her eyes. Yeah, she is. March brought Mara's 9th birthday. She didn't want a party, didn't want presents, just wanted a normal day. But Jolene insisted on doing something, so they compromised. After Saturday class, Jolene brought out a cake. The whole dojo sang happy birthday. Mara stood there embarrassed and pleased and wishing it would end and hoping it would last forever. When it was over, when the kids had eaten cake and gone home, when the dojo was clean and locked up, Mara and Jolene walked back to the trailer. The sun was setting. The air was cold but not brutal. Spring was coming. You could feel it. Jolene looked at her daughter, 9 years old. How does it feel? Mara shrugged. Same as 8. Jolene laughed. Fair enough. They walked in silence for a bit. Then Jolene spoke again. I'm proud of you. You know that, right? Mara nodded. I know. I just want to make sure you hear it. because I don't say it enough. You're an amazing teacher, an amazing person. And I'm grateful every day that you're my daughter. Mara felt her throat tighten. Thanks, Mom. They reached the trailer. Went inside. Scout greeted them at the door, tail wagging, happy they were home. Mara fed the dog. Jolene started dinner. And the evening unfolded like every other evening, quiet, comfortable, normal, exactly what Mara wanted. April brought warmth. The snow melted. The woods turned green. Mara started taking the students on hikes again. Every other Saturday, they'd walk for miles, stop at different spots, practice different skills. One week tracking, another week fire building, another week navigation. The kids absorbed it all, brought it home. Parents started telling Jolene that their children were more confident, more capable, more willing to try new things. One mother said her son, who had been terrified of everything and had started standing up to bullies at school, not fighting them, just standing firm, refusing to back down. He told me he learned it from Mara, the mother said. She teaches them that being strong isn't about being aggressive. It's about being calm, being centered, knowing who you are. Jolene passed this on to Mara, expected her to be proud, but Mara just shrugged. That's what Grandpa taught me. I'm just passing it on. Jolene hugged her. That's exactly what makes it so special. May brought Dale back. He hadn't been around much over the winter. Club business, things up north. But he showed up one Saturday morning, walked into the dojo during class, stood at the back, watched. When class ended, he approached Mara. This keeps getting bigger. Mara nodded. Yeah, people keep coming. Dale looked around, at the students putting away equipment, at Jolene talking to parents, at Carter and Becky demonstrating techniques to younger kids. Henry would be proud. Mara smiled. I hope so. Dale pulled something from his pocket, handed it to her. It was a key. What's this key to the Angels Clubhouse? 3 hours south. You ever need a place to go, a place to be safe, you use that. Mara held the key, feeling its weight. I don't know if I'll ever need it. Dale met her eyes. I didn't think you'd ever need to storm a sawmill to save your mother either. But you did, and you handled it. Just take it. Put it somewhere safe. Hope you never have to use it. Mara put the key in her pocket. Thank you. Dale nodded, looked around one more time, then left. Mara watched him go, added the key to her collection of important things. The brass coin, the patch, Henry's letter, now the key. Pieces of a life she hadn't asked for but had earned anyway. Summer came again. 1 year since everything had changed, since Dale, since the Scorpions, since Hale and the Syndicate and the sawmill. Mara thought about how different her life was now, how different she was. A year ago she'd been alone, just her in the woods and Henry's ghost. Now she had a dojo full of students, a mother who was present and sober and strong, friends in the Angels, a community that knew her name, a purpose that got her out of bed every morning. She stood in the backyard one evening, practicing forms, Scout beside her, the sun setting, the air warm. She moved through the sequences Henry had taught her, feeling the connection, the flow, the understanding that had taken years to build. When she finished, she stood there, breathing, centered, at peace. She looked up at the ski, saw the first stars appearing, found Cassiopeia, always there, always pointing home. Thank you, Grandpa, for everything. The words went out into the gathering dark, and somewhere, in whatever place Henry had gone, Mara believed he heard them, believed he was proud, believed he was watching, always with her. Stay calm, Mara. Whatever happens, stay calm. She smiled, took a breath, let it out slow. And she did. She stayed calm, just like he'd taught her, just like she always would.